Hey guys, it's Paul, combat veteran, MMA fighter, YouTuber, and today this is going to be a Q&A session with the questions that you guys have submitted about my military experience or my MMA career or just weird life questions in general. And that is because, of course, this is part of my week of protest against Games Workshop for what I feel is their suppression of small-time content creators and what I believe is bullying tactics that enable big corporations with highly paid teams of lawyers to scare off small-time creators who may or may not be protected by freedom of expression or IP laws in their country, but because small-time creators are not large enough to afford lawyers, Games Workshop and other major corporations are simply able to bully them into the compliance regardless of whether or not their creations are actually protected. So again, this week, no Games Workshop related content, but I hope you guys are here to enjoy this Q&A session, which you guys gave me dozens of questions about my time in the military and MMA and just all sorts of stuff. So let's get into it. Okay, I'm just sort of picking these out in random order. This one is from Victor Ciulascu. That's the most Romanian name I've ever heard. Did you deploy during your deployment? Did you work with soldiers from other militaries, specifically Romanian soldiers? So no, I didn't work with any Romanian soldiers. When we were transiting in and out of Bagram Airfield, usually that's the point where you are flown into country and then you take other flights to your specific sector. We passed briefly some French troops and some Polish troops. I actually found a Polish troop with my last name, which was awesome. We traded name tapes and patches. He was also an MP, so we were equally excited to find each other. But yeah, didn't work with the Romanians. So I can't speak one way or the other. Generally, though, I will say it seemed like the Polish military, Task Force White Eagle, was excellent. And I know we had a lot of outstanding Eastern European partners and Central Asian partners in Afghanistan, right? You may know, unlike Iraq, the Afghanistan mission was a NATO-backed effort, and so you had NATO OTAN, and you had a lot of NATO countries that contributed troops to that mission. And let's see. Okay, here is Forrest Wentworth. Forrest Wentworth II. He asks, sorry guys, sorry about this. There's always some siren going off. Okay, Forrest Wentworth asks, what is your background beyond the military? You seem to have a more developed knowledge of history and world events than average. So when I left active duty, obviously some of my knowledge came from my undergrad. I studied history and political science. And then when I left active duty after 4.5, 5 years, I was intent on going to grad school. And I applied to a bunch of programs. But the way sort of the timing worked out from when I left active duty to when grad school started, I actually had almost an entire gap year. And so I spent 8 months of that in Brazil, kind of learning Portuguese and just kind of learning about the culture and hanging out and doing a lot of partying because, I was 27 and I had all this deployment money. So that, every time you live overseas, you get to experience another culture, especially when it's 7 or 8 months, you really get to learn, you get below the surface a little bit about those places. When I went to grad school, of course, I went to grad school in Johns Hopkins at their School of Advanced International Studies. And of course, that's going to give you a top-notch background in studying geopolitics, studying economics. I focused on national security and international economic issues. So that, of course, gives you a really wide range, and the intersection of those two areas is is robust, to say the least. And actually, believe it or not, I spent my first year in Johns Hopkins Bologna campus. That's in Italy. So I came back from Brazil, cooled my heels for about 5 or 6 months, and then found out that I was going to Italy. And they were like, we won't let you into the regular campus. You got to go to the Italian campus. Which I initially was like, I don't want to move again. But then I got over it, and I had a blast. It was awesome. And again, another year of learning about a different culture, how a different country operates, which was just fascinating. And then after grad school, I got my current job. So yeah, I think that's the biggest source of it. The other thing, of course, where my knowledge comes from, I don't know if you guys can see it here, but it's books. I do a lot of reading, and I do a lot of reading on my own, right? You can see just a subset, the books that I've liked enough to not kind of donate when I'm done with them. But a lot of histories, a lot of books on psychology, a lot of books on the economy, right? I have Kissinger here, got Sapiens by Harari. If you haven't read that, it's excellent. Another great one, actually, is this Inside the NVA. This is an awesome look at how this totally unconventional military, the NVA, fought the industrialized superpower of the U.S. military. And it really describes in detail what became the blueprint of the insurgent fighting force. What else we got? Oh, here's another good one. Little War That Shook the World. This is a summary of sort of the Georgian-Russian War in 2000, I think it was in 2008. And yeah, it's another great look at the geopolitics of these regions and why different political actors in them made the decisions that they did. And so I think that's one of the best sources, is looking at books that cover a narrow topic really well, because they have the time and space to draw these connections from individuals and what they saw and experienced to what those decisions were. Because if you don't draw that connection, their decisions can look nonsensical, right? Because when you only have that 1,000-foot view. Another good one, a great book that does that, is William Craig's Enemy at the Gates. This is a really in-depth look at the Battle of Stalingrad. Same thing, detailed enough that you can see the individual decisions by these individual commanders and how they impacted the larger battle, the larger campaign, and ultimately the whole direction of the war. So yeah, I'd say that's probably where I learned most of my extra random facts and relationships. And yeah, learning new stuff all the time. What motivated you to make a YouTube channel? So I started a YouTube channel. If you look at MHGR, you can see I've been making videos there, outdoor videos, for probably 2 years. And I really enjoyed making videos and connecting with an audience, but it's really hard to make outdoor videos. It takes a tremendous amount of work to create them, and it's, didn't really go anywhere. And so I said, okay, well, I want to see if I can build a community and create engaging content in a way that doesn't involve me freezing to death. And so I said, let me do these React videos. I think they're fun. And I did a couple, realized I was getting a lot more traction than my outdoor videos ever got. And so I said, let's run with this. The other part of Dead Wafy's question, would you also have joined another armed forces, i.e. not the MPs or the Army, or was the MP something you looked upon as a kid? No, I gravitated to the Army. I think if I have abnormal color vision enough that I can't be a pilot, but I can be in the ground forces. At least I could as of 2006, right, when they would have let anybody with a pulse into the Army. And yeah, so I was definitely in the Army. I didn't know what specific job within the Army I wanted to do. And when I learned what the MPs were, right, and this may actually answer another question by Jake Rom. What's the average day for an MP like while on active duty? One of the things that really I enjoyed about the concept of the military police as the U.S. Army does it is that they have really three phases. They have three roles. The first role is a direct combat role. So they do both the movement in a large, think like a set piece battle, like a Cold War style tank battle. Military police do all the protection efforts for all the rear lines. So they get a lot of training in how to counter commando formations and irregular forces, and how to secure things like roadways and bases, and anti-terrorism, anti-irregular measures. Really a fascinating doctrinal area. Right. You also, of course, MPs get enough gear and equipment to actually fight delaying missions if those rear areas are assaulted by a larger force. That's why we have so many Mark 19 grenade launchers and 50 cals and what are called armored security vehicles. And that's because MPs are never meant to go on offense, but they are meant to do these fighting retreats to stall enemy advances while larger maneuver forces kind of turn. Right, so that's your direct combat role. Then, of course, states and training for that, right, in the field, simulating combat, right. That's a core function of any military unit, is going to be, training, skills training, battle training, that sort of thing, maneuver training. The next role that military police play stateside is their garrison mission, which is law enforcement. Right, the military police are the law enforcement on their base. There is no other police department to call. There is no civilian police department that has legal authority to come onto the base. You are the police, and you are also subject to a different set of laws called the Uniform Code of Military Justice. So it's not quite analogous to a U.S. police force. In some ways, you have much greater freedom to conduct law enforcement, and in some ways you're much more constrained. But it's a really unique system to operate under, and of course it means that even if you're stateside, you're still doing something. You still have a mission, you still have a purpose, you're still helping people and making these military bases safer, which a lot of people don't realize. Within a military base, I was at what was considered a medium-sized base, and we had a population of 50,000 people, and that included soldiers and their families that lived on base. It included contractors that commuted to the base for work. Again, 50,000 people is a decent-sized town, and so that's why we would need, on any given shift, probably about 25 to 50 military police doing law enforcement. And of course, the third mission is what became the military police's deployed mission, and that is training host nation security forces. Remember, an Army infantry officer won't necessarily get training, or an infantry unit, or a tank unit, or an artillery unit. They won't get trained on anything that has to do with helping a country grow a stable government. Right? Artillery officers are trained to shoot artillery at people. Tank commanders are trained to drive tanks and shoot at other tanks. So military police are the only force in the Army that is able to, you can drop them in, and the units are structured that at the company level, the 200-person level, you really can drop them in. We can fix our own vehicles, fix our own equipment. We have our own parts orders. Our headquarters is really robust. We have our own NBC. We depend on battalion for very, very little. You can drop a 200-person military police company into a foreign country, say, hey, we need you to help the police of this home country get better at policing. And we can say, okay, cool. We can show you how to set up a police station, how to organize a shift, how to do your guard mount, how to train you on your basic skills, how to document an incident, everything you would need to know to conduct policing. And in a country like Afghanistan, where the police are in combat somewhere in the country every single day, right? The Afghan security forces made up 70% of the casualties in on the friendly side of the war in Afghanistan, that military police skill where you blend combat and law enforcement is absolutely essential. And the MP units were deployed constantly in the Iraq and Afghan wars. So the mission really was compelling to me. The fact that you blended all your skills together, that you built stateside to be deployed, it's the future of warfare, right? The days of the mega tank battle, at least for now, have been phased sort of out, and they've been replaced with this irregular sort of doctrine where troops are expected to be, partner with other units, develop governance, secure an area, and engage in ground force, like maneuver and ground force combat. So that's what drew me to the MPs. Okay, Brava Michael says, after you got your college degree, did you think about doing something safer than being an MMA fighter? So I did one MMA fight. My first fight was in college. And then I actually did my remaining MMA fights while I was on active duty. And that's for a couple of reasons. One, the Army at the time had what it called its Army Combatives Program. And that was, they wanted a cadre of soldiers who, in addition to their regular skills, had a high level of hand-to-hand combat skill. And their curriculum for hand-to-hand combat was drawn directly from Gracie Jiu-Jitsu and mixed martial arts. So the Army said, hey, in order to stay competitive, in order to keep our skills sharp, we want to have MMA fighters in the military. And so there was an approval process that was actually not that difficult, where you would just have your commander sign off. They would say, yep, I approve, I approve Lieutenant Paul or Captain Paul to fight an MMA fight in this organization. You probably wouldn't be allowed to have sponsors, but I was never at a level where I was ever going to get any sponsors. But the Army was happy to field folks out. Some of the more prominent examples of that are guys like Tim Kennedy, right? He was on active duty and still competing professionally in mixed martial arts. Colton Smith was a Ultimate Fighter winner who was also on active duty. So, obviously those guys were at the top levels of the sport, and I certainly wasn't. But that program allowed me to do MMA, and because it was authorized by the Army, I had top-notch insurance, right? I would be able to go for no cost and get patched up however I needed to, because again, it was authorized. It was part of anything. If I was to get hurt, it would be considered in the line of duty. So yeah, I think, and the truth is that by 2013, we started to see the studies come out on what we call CTE, right? That's the brain disease that's sort of iconically known as being afflicting football players. But we started to realize that any sport, any activity that involved repeated blows to the head, even if you weren't being knocked out, that would still accumulate damage and could affect you cognitively later in life. And my grandfather, who passed away from Lewy body dementia, I knew that I have a somewhat risk. And again, I don't think the data is clear that Lewy body dementia and CTE are related, but I don't want either. And so I think that I was like, you know what? I'm never going to make any money as an MMA fighter, right? It's even if I was in the UFC, I would make less money than I've made on this channel. Even if I was a UFC fighter who, let's say, won their debut fight. So the money just isn't there. I realized that, I was at a point where I was like, okay, if I want to take the next step in this fighting career, it has to become a career, right? I have to take it as seriously as a profession. And I just thought I could do other things, right? It would be safer and more sustainable to do something else. And I think I was right. Okay, so let's see. We talked about the average day for an MP while on active duty, sort of. To be more specific about that, typically in the U.S. Army, at least when I was on active duty, you wake up and you get into work and you got to be there by 6:30. 6:30 a.m., right? You and your unit gather around. Usually you take some form of accountability. You make sure your unit is all there. If someone isn't there, you know exactly where they're going and what they're doing. And then you are going to do your physical training. You're going to do some sort of, prescribed exercise routine that you have set. That this is a way of making sure that, of course, soldiers maintain their fitness and maintain their readiness for combat. Once you've done your physical training, usually you release the soldiers. They can go back to their house if it's on base, if it's close by. If it's not, like I would go into the office and shower and change and put on my uniform. And then usually around 8:30, 9 o'clock, you'll have another formation that marks the start of the duty day. Again, as an officer, I was usually there because I thought it was important that soldiers know that I too am here at work, and it's important for me to at least say hi to my boss, talk to my first sergeant, do all that other sort of high level coordination that you always want to do at the start of a day. And then from there, you will look at your, calendar, right? It'll tell you which of kind of the 3 phases of being an MP that you guys are focused on that day or that week or that month usually. Usually it's honestly like 2 or 3 months. But you focus on that and you let it drive it. Sometimes it might be a training event. Often it's planning for a future training event. Sometimes it is planning or coordinating logistics for a police function. Sometimes it's police training, right? It can be all sorts of things. It can be helping out another unit that's doing their training and they need, for example, someone to role play an enemy, or they need someone to help borrow extra vehicles because theirs are having, equipment issues and they need these Humvees to certify their drivers, right? So there's always, that's the nature of leadership, right? It's not super typical, right? But usually the day will end around 6 p.m. And I would typically then I would actually change out of uniform in the locker rooms and would put on my workout clothes, and then I would go train MMA, usually for about, an hour and a half, 2 hours, because I was single and I didn't have anything else going on. And then around 8 p.m. I come home and get something to eat, shower, and crash for the night to wake up again and do it again. So it was really busy, but I'm a guy with a lot of time and energy anyway. So to me, I enjoyed it. And I enjoy it because I like the camaraderie. I like being around people. I like that shared mission. And again, when you're a 20-something single guy, you know what? There's a lot of worse places for your energy than working hard, making your unit function well, and then getting in a good hard workout. Okay, let's see. What is the greatest infantry weapon ever devised? This is Gojira TX. And he says, and why is it the AK-47? Well, I'm going to break your heart, bro. I think the greatest infantry weapon ever devised is I'm going to say the greatest infantry weapon ever devised is probably the bow. And that's because if you look at human history, right, the bow was used in military formations dating back as far as we can tell, at least to ancient Egypt, at least to 2000 BC, probably later. And what makes the bow so magic, right, is that human beings, throughout history would have been able to find a sharp object, a rock or something, and use that blade to attack another. I think that probably predates it. But what made a bow so revolutionary is that you could harm someone at a greater distance than they could hurt you with a manual weapon. So to me, suddenly you had this situation where instead of physically clashing armies, you could fight at a distance. It fundamentally changed the way human beings organized, the way human beings fought, and we see that even today where the dominant form of infantry weapon is, of course, still bow-like in the sense that it reaches across a distance, harms an enemy who is not close to you. So, sorry, the AK is up there though. All right, this is probably my favorite question I've gotten. Okay, where is the strangest place you have ever taken a Humvee or other light vehicle? Okay, so when I was deployed, we did not use Humvees, right? We had gone over to something called MRAPs, and that's for mine-resistant ambush-protected vehicle. And those were, of course, meant to be able to survive IED strikes, right? Now is the preferred weapon in Iraq and Afghanistan. And in Afghanistan, they had a particular issue where the M8 MRAPs were too heavy. There was too much armor for the soft, unpaved roads, especially when it would rain. So they designed a different vehicle called the MRAP ATV, the MRAP all-terrain vehicle. And this was basically, they took the crew compartment and they armored the absolute junk out of it. This thing was a little encapsulated bubble of armor. And everything else was super lightweight polymers. So it was meant to get hit with an IED and be completely obliterated, but like a NASCAR car, right? When it has a crash, everything flies in every direction, but that bubble of the crew is not penetrated. And that's what we would drive. So it wasn't Humvees, it was MATVs. And okay, let me think about this story, because there's two good ones, and I'm only going to share one because if this video does well, I will definitely do another Q&A. Okay, I think all right, here's a good one. So we did a day-long patrol with the Afghan, it was actually, I believe, the Afghan Border Police. And we, went out, did our thing, and we were coming back to our base to sort of debrief. This was at night. And we are in a convoy with the Afghan Border Police where it's one of our vehicles, one of theirs, one of ours, one of theirs. And that's so we can kind of provide some mutual coverage because the Afghan Border Police were pretty good and we trusted them. And so we're driving along, and the Afghan Border Police, mind you, had Humvees. They had the old school four-wheeled Humvees like you guys probably see at military surplus or that, what weird civilians drive sometimes. With just conventional turrets, right? Just one guy sitting on a turret with a little shielding. So we're driving along, and about 2/3 of the way through, we start to gradually slow down, slower and slower and slower. And finally we're moving at 5 miles an hour. And we're just like, what is going on? And my squad leader, who's up in the lead vehicle, radios me. He's like, hey man, I gotta stop. There's an ABP vehicle in front of me. I'm going to stop them. I got to ask what's going on, if they have a mechanical issue or whatever. So we stop the convoy, right? We sort of do our tactical fishbone. I hop out because I have to deal with the Afghan Border Police, and I should be the one doing it. And so I hop out, and I walk up to this Humvee, and I see out the turret, like a chimney, is a column of smoke. And I think to myself, oh my God, they're having some sort of mechanical issue because they don't know how to fix their Humvee. And as I get closer, I realize that these guys don't seem to be bothered by the fact that their Humvee is completely just billowing smoke. And it's not like the black smoke of something burning. It doesn't quite smell like burning rubber or burning electronics or any of the things that indicate a mechanical fire. And so we open the door to their Humvee, right? They see it, so we open the door, and we are hit with this tremendous blast of weed. And we look inside, all these Afghan Border Police officers, their eyes are just bloodshot red. They are laughing and giggling. They are just tickled pink, and they all have joints in their hands. And we are just looking at them, and we are like, what the hell? I didn't say, but we're like, what is this? What are you guys doing? And they were just like, we had an interpreter, and they're just like, man, the mission's over. We're heading back. We're just relaxing. And we're like, guys, do you realize that you're going 5 miles an hour? And they were like, oh, sorry, bro. We'll speed up. Don't worry about it, man. And I'm just like, let's get someone else driving this. Let's get someone who's a little less high. And I was just like, please open your windows. We're almost home. We'll get you a driver who's not baked out of his mind. And we just want to get home, and then you guys can smoke all the weed you want. So that was probably, I guess that's not the weirdest place, but that is the weirdest reason I've ever stopped a Humvee, is because the Afghan border police were so high they didn't realize that they were holding up the entire mission. All right, guys, that is all I have for you for this Q&A. If you guys enjoy it, man, let me know in the comments if you got more questions, right? I'll do another one for sure. This has actually been sort of fun. And yeah, again, remember to stand up for the little guys who can't afford a team of lawyers to fight their copyright disputes, right? Encourage YouTube to have a system that better protects small-time creators and protects, not only lets small-time creators defend their intellectual content, but allows artists who use their work in a way that is protected, right? Parody, fair use, give them a recourse. Okay, thanks so much, guys. Also be sure to check it out. I've got merch link down below. Lots of cool stuff. Added a new shirt recently. Might add another one here coming up. Definitely worth getting. Okay, that is all I had. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.